12:21 a.m. on September 30th, 2015, Kelly Gissendaner became the first woman executed in Georgia in 70 years. In her final moments, she showed no resistance. She did not scream. She was calm, almost resigned. But how did a mother, a wife, and a woman of faith end up on death row? Her story didn't begin in an execution chamber, but in a small town where a marriage fell apart, a life insurance policy was altered, and a deadly plan was set into motion. This is the story of how Kelly's desperate choices led to her husband's death, and ultimately her own. A story where love, betrayal, and murder collide. The choices that sealed her fate. On February 7, 1997, Kelly Gissendaner and Gregory Bruce Owen executed a plan months in the making. The quiet town of Auburn, Georgia, became the setting for a chilling act of betrayal. Kelly, determined to escape her crumbling marriage, had recruited Owen, her lover, to help her get rid of her husband Douglas. She had prepared the scene carefully. She dropped Owen off at her home, gave him a nightstick and a hunting knife, then went out dancing with friends. Meanwhile, Douglas was at a friend's house working on cars. Owen waited. As the night grew late, Douglas returned home around 11:30 p.m. Owen forced him into his car at knife point and drove him to a remote, wooded area near Harbins Park in Gwinnett County, miles from safety. There, Owen ordered Douglas into the woods, staging the scene to look like a robbery. He took Douglas's watch and wallet before striking him in the head with the nightstick. As Douglas collapsed, Owen didn't stop. He stabbed him repeatedly, 8 to 10 times, striking him in the neck and back. Kelly arrived just as the murder took place. She did not immediately get out of her car. Instead, she watched. When she was certain Douglas was dead, she checked on him, but there was no sign of life. The crime didn't end there. Owen followed Kelly in Douglas's car, driving to a location where she had left a can of kerosene. Together, they set her husband's car on fire, destroying any evidence that could link them to the crime. As the flames consumed the car, Kelly and Owen drove away, leaving behind the brutal evidence of their betrayal. The murder was complete. A life had been extinguished, and Kelly's plan to be free from her marriage had taken its horrific toll. But how does someone become capable of such calculated cruelty? To understand the woman who could orchestrate her husband's murder, we need to go back to where it all began. Kelly Gissendaner's life was shaped by pain from the very beginning. Born into a poor cotton farming family, she faced hardship before she even understood it. As a child, she was molested by her stepfather and other men. The trauma of those years never left her. During her senior year of high school, she was sexually assaulted. 9 months later, she gave birth to her first son. At 19, Kelly married Jeff Banks. It was her first attempt at stability, but it didn't last. The marriage ended after just 6 months. Then she met Douglas Gissendaner. They married in 1989. They had a child together. Life was hard. They lost their jobs and moved in with Kelly's mother. Douglas joined the army. They were sent to Germany. There, Kelly became pregnant by another man, who later died of cancer. The weight of it all became too much. She and Douglas divorced in 1993. In 1995, they remarried. Kelly hoped for a fresh start. They bought a house in Auburn, Georgia, in December 1996. But the cracks in their relationship grew deeper. Kelly had 2 sons from previous relationships. Douglas became their stepfather, but the emotional scars from her past haunted her, leaving her feeling trapped. Her need for control grew stronger, and when her marriage began to unravel, Kelly believed there was only one way out. And on February 7th, 1997, she acted on that belief. The plan she and Owen had crafted for months finally went into motion. By the next morning, everything had changed. The day after the murder, police discovered the burned-out car, but there was no body. The search began immediately. Kelly Gissendaner, unaware that the truth was closing in, went on local television. She appealed to the public, begging for help in finding her missing husband. But her story, and Owen's, began to unravel. Police interviews raised suspicions. The pieces weren't adding up. On February 20th, 1997, Douglas Gissendaner's body was found, face down about a mile from his car. An autopsy revealed the cause of death, multiple knife wounds to the neck. But the damage was so severe, even the medical examiner couldn't tell which strike killed him. Animals had torn at the flesh, making it nearly impossible to determine the exact moment of death. On February 24th, Owen broke. He confessed to the murder, implicating Kelly. The truth was out. Kelly had fled. She thought she could escape, but the law was closing in. The authorities issued an all-points bulletin. Kelly was on the run. For 2 weeks, she stayed one step ahead. Her desperate attempt to evade capture was futile. On March 3rd, 1997, the police tracked her down. They surrounded a house in Gwinnett County. No escape. Kelly was arrested without resistance. She had run out of places to hide. The chase was over. Now Kelly would face the consequences. When her trial began in 1998, she knew the prosecutors held all the cards. Kelly Gissendaner faced a jury. The evidence against her was overwhelming. Prosecutors painted her as the mastermind behind her husband's murder. They told the jury how she had planned everything, using Owen as her tool. 3 months before the murder, Kelly had approached Owen, asking for a way to get rid of her husband. Owen had suggested a divorce, but Kelly refused. She wanted Douglas out of her life, the house, and a life insurance payout. Owen took the stand. He testified against Kelly, detailing the murder plot. His words were damning. Kelly had orchestrated it all, but Kelly's defense team fought back. They argued her troubled past, her history of abuse, and her mental state. They claimed she was a victim, too. However, Kelly's cold demeanor in court worked against her. She showed no emotion, no tears, no remorse. She remained composed, even as Owen described her role in the crime. It wasn't just the murder that haunted her defense. During the trial, Kelly was found to have threatened witnesses. She had even attempted to pay one to commit perjury. The prosecution used this to show her true nature: cold, calculating, unapologetic. The jury deliberated. They didn't need long. The verdict was clear: guilty. Kelly was sentenced to death. The crime she orchestrated and the coldness she displayed in court sealed her fate. Kelly Gissendaner's sentencing to death was final. The courtroom was quiet as the judge declared the sentence. She was sent to Metro State Prison. There, she was one of only a few women on death row in Georgia. Her life in prison was marked by isolation. Days passed slowly. 23 hours in her cell. 1 hour of recreation. Kelly Gissendaner's final years on death row were marked by a series of failed appeals. Every one of them was rejected. Her lawyers argued that she was less culpable than Owen, who had actually committed the murder. They claimed that Kelly had been willing to plead guilty, but her lawyers had advised against it. They believed the jury would not sentence her to death because she was a woman and didn't physically kill Douglas. They were wrong. The jury saw Kelly as the mastermind, the one who orchestrated everything while keeping her hands clean. Her death sentence was upheld on appeal after appeal. But something remarkable happened during Kelly's years on death row. The woman who had once coldly planned murder began to transform. Despite her remorse and transformation, Kelly's appeals were denied. She had expressed deep regret for her actions. She had become a model inmate, turning her life around through faith. But the law was unforgiving. She spent her days ministering to other women in prison.
The first time I met Kelly, I was on suicide watch at Metro State Prison in the lockdown unit. I wanted to die. I'd cut my wrist and the forepart of my arm. Kelly, not knowing me at the time personally, spoke to me through an air vent and said, "You will live and you're gonna do great things."
In 2010, Kelly enrolled in a theology program. She became a student of Christian thinkers like Dietrich Bonhoeffer and Rowan Williams. She even built a friendship with theologian Jürgen Moltmann, exchanging letters on faith. Her studies gave her a sense of purpose. She completed a theological degree through Emory University. Kelly was no longer the woman who had orchestrated murder. She had found peace, but it came too late. Her clemency request was rejected again. The clock was ticking. Kelly had found redemption, but the system would not allow her to escape the consequences of her crime. Kelly Gissendaner's execution was delayed multiple times. First, a winter storm pushed the date to March 2, 2015. Then a problem with the execution drug, pentobarbital, caused another delay. The drug had been improperly stored, but it was eventually determined that it was still usable. As the delays continued, the pressure on Kelly grew. Her clemency requests were heard by the Georgia Board of Pardons and Paroles, but the board refused to spare her life. Support came from many, including Pope Francis's representative, Archbishop Carlo Maria Vigano, and former Chief Justice Norman S. Fletcher, who argued that capital punishment was disproportionate to her crime. But on September 29, 2015, the board again declined to commute her sentence. On September 30, 2015, Kelly walked to the chamber calmly, her fate sealed after years of appeals and delays. Kelly's final meal was cheese dip with chips, Texas fajita nachos, and a diet frosted lemonade. Her final words were simple, but full of emotion. "Tell my kids I went out singing Amazing Grace. Tell the Gissendaner family I'm so sorry. That amazing man lost his life because of me, and if I could take it back, if this would change it, I would have done it a long time ago. But it's not. And I just hope they can find peace. And I hope they find some happiness. God bless you." At 12:10 a.m., the lethal injection began. Kelly's voice singing Amazing Grace faded as the drug took effect. She was pronounced dead at 12:21 a.m. Kelly Gissendaner became the first woman executed in Georgia in 70 years, the only woman executed in the United States in 2015. Her life, her choices, and the questions her case raised about justice and redemption ended in that final quiet moment. If you found Kelly Gissendaner's story thought-provoking, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification button so you never miss a new story. Stay tuned for more powerful narratives that challenge the way we think about justice, redemption, and the choices that shape our lives.